There is something weird going on the Star Fox on Switch 2 as compared to the original N64 version that I haven't seen anyone else talk about. Probably because it may not matter all that much, though maybe it could for reasons I haven't fully understood yet, but also because I don't think anyone is stupid enough to do the test that I did, which is the fact that I've been curious how accurate is the new game compared to the original, because as you probably know by now, it's a one-to-one remake of the original game, meaning enemies, objects, behavior of your R-Wing, the physics, it all should be identical to the original game. Which means that if we let it play it by itself, as I am here, I'm not touching the controller at all, it should behave the exact same way, not just in both games, but across multiple playthroughs of the same game. And as it turns out, that's not quite the case, and it gets a little weird. So, let's go to the N64 version for comparison. So again, I'm not pressing anything on the controller at all, and as you can see, I take a lot of damage from these initial enemies, which happens in both versions. So we're going to speed up a little bit here, until finally, this little hopping guy right down here, he's what takes me out. Now watch, we're approaching the Hollow asteroid. We're not at it yet. In fact, we die a fair amount before it, and we crash into the entrance, like just outside the rim. And that happens across all three tests I did with the 3 lives I had, where you can see I crash in the exact same spot in all three lives that I had. So yeah, it's consistent in the N64 version. Now on Switch 2, here's where it gets interesting. So, as you might expect, I took a lot of damage from that initial wave of enemies. Then once again, this little guy is what takes me out as I take sustained fire. But check it out, this time we make it a little bit farther. We actually make it pretty much inside the hollowed out asteroid, which is a little interesting. But we died in a similar enough place. Now on subsequent playthroughs, however, check this out. We actually end up making it a little bit farther. Look, we're still alive as we're entering the hollowed out asteroid. What's going on here? Until a different blast takes us out. And something similar happens on the third time as well. So the second 2 tries are similar, but again, the first try, which we're going to go back to right now, is, again, we die a fair amount before we enter the asteroid, which doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't it be behaving not just like on 64, but also consistent across the 3 lives? It wasn't making a whole lot of sense. So I decided to go back and take a closer look at each of the 3 lives on the Switch 2 version to kind of try and understand what's going on here. And then we'll go back to the 64 version in a few moments. So first up, as I noticed early on, there's this asteroid that we hit, which you can see right there. Now on my first playthrough, it ended up bumping me a little bit to the left. But on the second and third lives, well, it bumped me a little bit higher on the second life. Now on the third life, even higher yet. I still don't know why that's happening, but I do have a possible theory to explain some of this discrepancy, and that's the fact that the timing of the level is actually a little bit different, whether you're coming in from a cold boot, like from the cutscene that opens the level, or you're continuing from dying. So for example, I end up syncing all 3 clips to Slippy's dialogue, because it seemed to be a consistent point that the levels actually start, synchronizing at. But if we back up a little bit to the opening of the level, you can see that the timing of this HUD element is actually different. This is my first clip that I just came into it from the cutscene, but on the second clip, we're still on the loading screen here, and same thing for the third clip. So again, the timing of even that opening segment's a little bit different, which could be affecting the timing of the asteroids, whether their placement or probably more accurately their rotation, I'm thinking, and maybe it just doesn't get fully reset between respawns, which might be why it knocks me out in different areas. But even beyond that, that doesn't fully account for why it knocks me to the left here rather than, at least up, which it did in the second and third clips, as you can see again there. And that's when I also noticed that if we go back to the beginning here, our actual placement of the R-Wing is also different. So if you come in, this is, again, my first playthrough right now. You can see the 2 lives remaining. I'm starting a little bit closer to the middle of the screen, but after dying, you end up spawning a little bit higher. So that's my second, and that's then my third playthrough. So again, after dying, you end up spawning consistently at the top of the screen, whereas on the first playthroughs, when you come back when you're entering either from a game over or from the opening cutscene, you're more centered. And that affects your placement when you get hit by that initial asteroid. Whereas on 64, you consistently start in this part of the screen, which is closer to the first life on Switch 2. And then in case you're curious, after you get hit by the asteroid, you can see that it knocks me upward there. Now, this still doesn't account for why we end up dying at a different place, though I do have another theory as to why that is, because I know a pretty big difference in how the enemy hits affect your R-Wing, because check this out. When we come across a giant wave of enemies here, you're going to see what happens when they start shooting me. And that's every single shot ends up knocking me out of the way, to the point that I consistently end up in the top left corner on N64. But on Switch 2, that does not happen, because watch this. Every single hit doesn't move me at all. I end up staying completely stationary because, as it turns out, at least in the demo on Switch 2, your aircraft no longer is impacted by enemy fire. You no longer react to it, which can end up making the game a little bit easier, perhaps, I would think. I mean, maybe it makes it harder. I don't know. I would assume it makes it easier, giving you more control of your aircraft. And that's actually a pretty substantial change compared to the original, where you could get knocked around more easily. And I wonder if that positioning is what's affecting where you die. Because now, some of the shots here don't actually impact the R-Wing. Like that one right there, watch. Because I just took damage. I think I'm still in the iframe state, perhaps because I'm closer to the enemy, and the subsequent shot didn't affect me. So my theory is that the positioning of me being in the middle of the screen has everything to do with that, in that each shot isn't able to actually inflict damage, again because of the invincibility frames, whereas on 64, that might not be the case, where the shots have a longer travel time to get to me, ensuring each one is actually landing. Now, I did actually try testing this myself on 64 by trying to stay in the middle of the screen. That was actually very difficult for any number of reasons, so I wasn't able to confirm that directly. So if anyone else has any better ideas, hey, feel free to let me know. So yeah, everyone, that's what I noticed, in that on Switch 2, your R-Wing doesn't get knocked around by taking damage, seemingly, which is interesting, and again, I think could make the game a little bit easier at points, in addition to there being those odd timing differences involving the asteroids, at least, and also possibly the start of every level in the game, based on whether you're coming in from the cutscene or whether you're coming in from, you know, dying and continuing. And that makes me wonder if that could have other, you know, differences in the game too as it unfolds. But again, I was only able to tell based on me not doing anything with the controller, so when you're actually playing the game, none of this may actually matter at all. But that's what I found. I had to report it because I thought it was interesting, because it is a difference compared to the original game, or several differences compared to the original game. So with that, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what you make of this, or if there's anything I missed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. So with that, we'll catch you later. Bye, everyone. As we say goodbye to Fox McCloud too.